Whoa, hey! Welcome to the Bible for Not Dummies, because if you're interested in what the Bible's all about, then you, my friend, are not a dummy. You may just be curious about the Bible, but if you're curious, it might be God tugging at your heart, because the Bible tells us that God wants everyone to know truth and to know Him. So I'm glad you've joined me for this series of videos where we're answering the question, so what's the Bible all about anyway? In the last episode of the Bible for Not Dummies, we looked at Genesis creation account in the context of other creation accounts from around the world. In this episode, we're going to dive into the Genesis creation account a bit further. So first, right off the bat, the very first words of Genesis, as well as the Bible itself, are, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." In the beginning, God. This is a very profound statement because it essentially tells us that God didn't have a beginning. He wasn't born. He has no point of origin. God simply was. Then Genesis immediately establishes that God created the heavens and the earth, the universe essentially.
So does Genesis tell us how God created the heavens and the earth?
Great question. Yes, the book of Genesis tells us that God created the heavens and the earth by speaking them into existence. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God said, "Let there be a space between the waters," and there was land. By His words, He spoke the stars and planets into existence, and by His words, plants, trees, and all kinds of vegetation covered the land. From His words, He spoke the animals of the sea, land, and air into being. God chose to demonstrate His power through spoken word, through language. Maybe this is why words and language are so powerful for us to this day. Then finally God created mankind, and according to the Genesis account, mankind was special to God above all other aspects of creation. When God created mankind, it says He created us in His image. While God created everything, nothing besides mankind bears His image. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean God has arms, legs, and a body like ours. I mean, who knows, maybe He does. But more importantly, God created people with the ability to think, to be self-aware, to have a conscience for judging right and wrong. And lastly, while God has no beginning or end, He created us like Himself in the sense that He created us to have no end. Yes, eventually this physical body will die, but that's not the end God intends. We'll discuss this more in future episodes of the Bible for Not Dummies. But something that's very interesting as we read about the creation of mankind in Genesis chapter 1, God says, "Let us make human beings in our image to be like us." It's interesting that God refers to Himself in the plural. Now, it must be understood that Christianity is monotheistic, meaning there's only one God. This is in contrast to the Mesopotamian, Greek, and some of the other creation stories we discussed previously where there are many gods. Those would be considered polytheistic. So we learn from the Genesis account that God didn't come from within creation or some primordial and chaotic pre-creation. He existed before creation and before time. He also exists with what's called a triune nature, which means God is one God, but three co-eternal or always existing persons of the same substance or essence. Now, that's hard to comprehend. It's like mind equals blown type of stuff. That's actually an interesting issue in and of itself. When we look at other creation stories, the gods have beginnings and ends, and they're very much of the same nature as mankind. You could almost conclude that it was actually mankind that created the gods, not the other way around, since the gods seem to behave more like Marvel superheroes or supervillains rather than beings that are above human shortcomings and self-indulgences. So the idea that God is one God, but three persons with the same nature kind of goes beyond the scope of man's capacity to understand. And this idea of God is not confined to the imagination of mere men. It's one of those ideas we can think about, but it's something we don't really have a frame of reference that helps us understand. This idea suggests that the God of the Bible was not a creation of man. And while the Genesis creation account only references God the Father and God the Spirit, as mentioned in verse 1, we learn of God the Son, or Jesus Christ, later, and most poignantly in the Gospel of John, chapter 1. So as we look at the Genesis creation account, we see a creator that's unlike any other. The creator of the Bible stands out in a number of ways. Creation was spoken into existence by his words. After each part of creation, God looked at what he created and said it was good. From this we see a creator who's benevolent, or kindly and not self-serving. We also see a creator with no challenger. He created everything, and everything is subject to him. And we see a creator that took great care and love in creating mankind, and crowned mankind over all creation by making us in his very own image.
So why should I believe in the biblical creation account? What about the theory of evolution?
That's a great question, and I'm going to discuss that in an upcoming Side Notes episode of the Bible for Not Dummies. I'll be posting that soon, and I'll add a link to the description below when it's available. It's going to be a really fun episode, so you're not going to want to miss it. So there you have it, a look at the biblical creation account from Genesis 1. I hope you'll join me for the next episode where we're going to be discussing the foundational chapters of the book of Genesis. So until next time, thanks for joining me on the Bible for Not Dummies.